Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday to you too. Are you well?
Yeah, really well. Yeah, good. Busy week, but it was good.
Excellent. Good stuff. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, transformation, and a little bit on claims this week, as well as fair value, but we'll get into that. So let's start with the news, as always. So, Ben, I've got a bit of news. So as I mentioned, I think last week, London Market Claims is back. It's a real world event in October, and next week we're doing a bit of a preview show just to kind of preview some of the topics and themes that we'll be covering over the course of the day. I think most of those topics and themes will be coffee, networking, real people in a room.
Small croissants, pastries.
Yeah. Aren't these good? But aside from that, I'm sure we'll be talking about some key themes in London Market as well. So we've got a show next week. You're involved in it as well, Ben, where I've just interviewed 4 practitioners and speakers from the industry to talk about what's on their agenda, what's top of mind, and also, importantly, right now, what it's going to be like when we return to the office. Because I think those conversations are still taking place within organizations of what that's like. And I just thought I'd play a quick snippet, I suppose, just to give us a taster of what it's going to be like next week on the preview show. And this is Miles Banks, who's the chairman of global claims at Willis Towers Watson. And he's talking about returning to the office and what it might feel like. So let me play this clip, and then we can perhaps talk about some of the issues that are highlighted. So here we go.
I think it is a balance. I think that's the right word. I do not believe, and I may be found out to be completely wrong on this, but I don't believe we'll go back to the way we were working, i.e. getting in at sort of everybody getting in between 8 and 9 and leaving between sort of 5 and 7, and everybody in an office environment working together. I don't think that'll happen, and the reason I don't think that'll happen is because we have so successfully worked from home.
Yeah.
So there haven't been the downsides that we thought there would be. I mean, I've always been a huge critic of people working from home because I know what I would have been like if I'd been working from home. However, I think it's been remarkable. It's been robust, as I said, and crikey, I just don't think we will go back to where we were, where everybody was doing those times in the office 5 days a week.
So I play that clip because it's really interesting to hear Miles talking about that shift in mindset from being a non-believer of work from home. And I've had conversations with people as well when you say, "Oh, I'm working from home on Friday." "Oh, you're working from home, are you?" Yeah. So I just thought it was a really interesting clip to show that I think there has been a switch in mindset, and it will be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yes, I definitely think there has. I mean, having worked most of my life in agencies, I don't think this is anything new to people who work in agencies, because I think there has always been, and I've been one of the people, having run agencies, applying, the rules, as it were. And I think in those environments, it's much lighter touch. I think you do trust people. You have a different type of work environment, which doesn't rely on, bureaucracy and policies and procedures. So that's not necessarily going to be anything new. What I think is going to be the shift is that everybody's going to be somewhat in the same boat, and we're going to have to work out what the rules are and the procedures. And I think that is happening in terms of the conversations that I'm having with clients, which is, oh, well, I'll be there, and oh, by the way, I'm not going to be dressed up in business wear, and I'm, so that we're all checking each other in a sense to make sure we're all okay we're all cool with what's going to happen. Probably though, we'll pick through quite quickly what this new, I'm going to use it again, the new normal will look like, and I'm going to bring it back. It came in, it went out, it's back. So it won't be perhaps so different, but I think for the big companies it will be different, because partly what Mars is saying is the concern about whether people would actually operate well from home comes from the belief that you need rules and procedures for people to work. They need to follow those rules. And I think, once you're released from those, or you're not having someone looking over your shoulder, then that's the same. But then I was listening to someone was telling me the other day that they've been able to measure the keystrokes or see the keystrokes of all of their staff working from home. And actually that they fired a couple of people based on the fact of that evidence, those data. So there will be other sorts of methods, I'm sure, of what we might call surveillance or checking on people. I think you have to be, if I run a team, and I think I always have to be aware of whether people are, I don't ever have any particular concerns about people, but you just have to make sure it is on the straight and narrow. Otherwise, if some people aren't pulling their weight, there's going to be issues, aren't there?
Yeah, I think that's true, isn't it? It's more about the culture in it. There is a danger, and we've all seen it, whether it's in the office or working from home. If you have somebody who's not pulling the weight, and the manager or leader doesn't see it, but the rest of the team do, then it's so disruptive.
It is
unbelievable. But yeah, so more of that next week at the preview show. You can register for that. It's free to come along, so hopefully you can make it there. Right, let's move things on. So other news, massive sporting. It's been brilliant actually this week because the tennis has started as well, and I watched a few really good games of tennis. So I've not put that in there, but the tour started. Mayhem in the first week, as there normally is, but a couple of serious crashes to begin with, and I think the woman who caused the first crash, she's handed herself in yesterday into the police station. So that's good news. But then the Euros as well, and we thought we'd just compare kind of the athletes that take part in these two different sports, and we've kind of just compared the pain threshold, I suppose, between the two things and what it tells you about the sport. So no pain, no gain. So there on the left-hand side, you've got Geraint Thomas, who fell off his bike and dislocated his shoulder. And the medic there is just popping it back in and then shoving him back on his bike. And off he goes again. And then on the right-hand side, you've got football players rolling around, obviously with cramp, which is painful. But there is a lot of rolling around in football.
There's a lot of cramp as well in football. They all seem to get cramp, and then they have to get the coach on and things. And the one about the Geraint Thomas one was that actually the medics had the car door open thinking he was going to stop the race because it's an extremely painful injury, a dislocated shoulder, as you might expect. And even when it's put back in, it doesn't stop the pain. So he just then decided himself he'd just get back on the bike, no fuss, but rode for 2 hours in sort of extreme agony. But you can't imagine the footballers doing that, can you? There's just no way.
No.
And surely cyclists get cramp as well.
Yeah,
You don't see them lying on the side of the road with their legs being held up by a team of physios, do you?
No. It's and also the way it's broadcast as well, especially the highlight show, which I think is brilliant on ITV4, where they just go, oh yeah, this guy crashed, he's out. He was a favourite. He's not any longer. Move on.
Yeah, exactly. They just get on with it. But the other thing is you can see it in the faces here, because these two photos are quite good, is that Geraint Thomas, definitely in extreme agony by any definition of pain, looks slightly concerned, doesn't he? It's almost like saying, is it going to rain later or not type look. And then these two players on the right-hand side, and that's what always strikes me about any injury in football, it looks as if they've literally been, shot through the knee or something, doesn't it? They're just, it's the most, this thing that's just happened to me is extreme agony. I mean, I've had cramp. I don't do that.
No, it's all part of the game now, isn't it? But anyway, we could talk about this for hours, but let's move it on.
Pathetic.
Move it on. So we we should also just say hello to John Muir, shouldn't we? Because he is recovering in hospital. So get well, John. Hope to see you soon and swift recovery.
Yeah, get well soon, John. Great friend of the show. Yeah, we hope to see you up and back on your feet soon.
Yep, definitely. So our usual item. The Tog blog will be back next week because none of us have been in town, so we can't give you any fashion tips. But we're also going to talk to Ellie and see if the same thing is happening in women's wear. There's kind of been this transformation of what to wear in the city, but we'll pick that up next week. So our main feature, we're going to be talking about fair value. And Ben, I'm going to just hand over to you to kind of just give us the backstory on this, I suppose.
Yeah, so look, people will recognise and will have seen in the press this article about the FCA and its ending of the loyalty penalty or price walking, as it's also called, particularly for motor and home policies. And what this piece is about really is to draw attention to the wider changes that are coming around fair value, which are, in my opinion and others, just fundamental to the future of the insurance industry. And I don't think that the insurance industry has yet really realised this, as it often doesn't. And so just to give a bit of background, so the FCA has been looking at pricing and products, and I think it's worth reflecting that my view that part of this is to do with the fact that the FCA has begun to realise that this is an incredibly product-based industry. It's not just about a service. It's about products that are sold often through distributed networks, and those products end up in the hands of customers. And the question is, are they any good? And do they represent in their terms fair value? So this is quite a change. And one thing, just again to say at the outset of this, is that the very large risks are actually excluded from this. So, the cats and things like that are not there. And I think for good reason, in that they are, and I've always felt this, a very different type of business. They are much more of a service business. They are about the contract. But, when a major event happens, that is inevitably going to be discussed, cogitated over. Lawyers will be involved. All of the professionals that need to be involved will be, and that's the classic indemnity type insurance product. But when we get into, your more basic, if you like, your more vanilla type things, this is where the concerns have been and the ways in which these have been sold. So there's a very good piece of research that's been done by the FCA. Well, I think it's a good piece of research. It's got lots of research terminology in it, which may make it good or not. I'm not sure, but it's basically focused on whether discounting and that sort of thing and offers has created an issue for customers. And this is the first time in insurance, at least, that they've looked at the point of sale as opposed to the point of claim where the product is priced. And so this is really quite interesting. And really it comes from this idea that the things that insurers do to sell products, and indeed brokers as part of that distribution chain, are potentially shrouding the overall value or price of that product. In other words, the customer gets confused and doesn't know. And this piece of research looked at two areas. One was price complexity, and the other was misdirected attention. In other words, using things to direct your attention away from the product value itself. So you think you're buying something of value, but it's actually the worst product. So the basic findings were that from all industries, things that are, price discounts, things like that, they are always appealing to people. They appeal to your emotional side, your cognitive sort of side of the brain, if you like. And really what they do is they reduce the mental effort in making the decision. So by example, my wife always buys things, and she prefaces every purchase that arrives at the door with saying, it's okay because it's 20% off. But what she doesn't realize is that she's being led up the garden path by the companies saying, well, 20% makes the decision easy. I don't have to think about whether it's good value or check the price against anybody else because it's 20% off, right? And actually, this is exactly what they found in the insurance industry, was that when they tested this with quite a lot of people, actually, respondents were significantly less likely to choose the best deal when they were offered these discounts, and particularly when they had a pound sign or a percentage. So we've become almost conditioned to these kind of signals, if you like, that we become like Pavlov's dog. We just go, oh look, 20% off, or a percentage, or a pound, and you just go, right, well, I'll have that because that's better. But you don't actually think about it. It sort of disconnects your brain, and it's quite a significant difference. So it's about 28% less likely to choose the best deal on that basis. So it wasn't subtle. The misdirected attention thing, there was no difference, so they didn't really find any big issues, particularly with that. They also found, interestingly, that switchers, people who did switch more often, were more likely to choose the best policy. In other words, ignore the discounts as such and work out what was the best policy in terms of value. So this is really around pricing, and it's at this stage, this is, you might argue this is somewhat narrow, and this is what the industry is focused on, which is the rules then came in to say, right, there is a problem with all of this discounting, and so the loyalty penalty has to go, which it has done. And there's some controversy around that, and we've talked about it on the show, because the controversy is that if you have an intervention by a regulator on things like this, then the unintended consequences could be on the very people who get the best deals. In other words, this reduces shopping around because it makes prices more transparent. Now, they've said it will save 4.2 billion. There's another figure somewhere else which says it will save 1.2 billion, which they ascribe to different models, interestingly. But that's a bloody big difference, right? But anyway, so in other words, they don't know, but they put a big number in there. And but so this is the kind of narrow thing. But once you start to look at this, and I have been looking through this, I have been wading through the through the FCA report, which is called the General Insurance Pricing Practices Market Study. And not a very sexy title, but it's like always, those things without a sexy title make the biggest impact.
Yeah.
And this is what they say about this. They say, we propose to require manufacturers, i.e. insurers, and distributors, i.e. brokers or MJs, to consider whether products represent fair value for customers. And that is the fundamental statement of requirement, if you like, from the regulator, which is you're going to have to prove it. And there are a number of rules now that are going to come in which are about fair value. And you're going to bring some things up in a minute which will show why this is important. But this is much more than a pricing change. This is much more than about price walking and a hit on the industry on that side, and the aggregators and so on, which is what has been discussed about. This is about purpose. This is about the future of the industry in terms of the product itself, is that they're going to have to prove this fair value. Now, I've spoken to a number of people about this, experts in this area. When I say experts, I mean they're both legal experts, but they're also people who are experiencing the questions from the insurers themselves. And they're saying there's a huge amount of concern and questions about how do we measure fair value of these products.
Yeah,
because it's quite tricky, and we'll come on to that. So basically, a number of things have been brought out by the a number of issues and concerns have been brought up by people, the insurers, around this, and not surprisingly. But the FCA say they generally agree with it, in inverted commas, which probably means they've got no choice. And sharing, so they were worried about sharing commercially sensitive data. That was one thing, but they seem to have sorted that out and said, well, you will have to disclose all commissions and payments and fees, but you don't have to disclose commercial arrangements you have with other people, for example, with brokers, or so you don't have to disclose commercially sensitive stuff which would infringe competition laws. But you will administratively. There's a big burden there that could potentially be there, which is around disclosure of commissions and transparency. The other thing is the level of application. In other words, where does this apply? Where do these new rules apply? And is it a product or an individual level? So, for example, if you change or you add an exclusion to a product or a policy, would they then have to each time prove fair value? So, because that was a concern that would become a sort of bureaucratic nightmare. In fact, what they've said is it's product led, and that. So this is another of these kind of vagaries, which is you don't have to change it every time you do one exclusion. But if, for example, you made a lot of exclusions or changes to policies, then you should consider you might have to. So this means the FCA is not going to let you off the hook here. It's going to say you're going to have to constantly review these products and policies to see if they're crossing a line.
Yeah.
So that's quite difficult. And then the other one is about this what they call the reasonably foreseeable period. So in other words, products that have their value in insurance, they are future promises. They're not the thing you get today. And we'll talk about this in a second as well. So the question is, what is a reasonably foreseeable period? And the FCA said this may vary depending on the type of product and the type of contract. And we expect firms to exercise judgment on this point. So again, another big monitoring exercise over products and policies and reviewing of these. So the example that was picked up was like a pet policy. It's relatively easy because you can tie it into the lifetime of your moggy or your dog, and that's fine. But for other things, it might be a little more difficult to work out what's the foreseeable value of this. And products that people buy may not, for the length of time that they're covered, may not be valuable, for various reasons. So that's another one. But the big question is how to assess fair value. And there are a number of kind of rules and some suggestions. But fundamentally, the answer to that question from the FCA is that you as an organization must assess fair value and prove it to us. We're not doing it for you. We're not going to give you a set of rules here. We expect you to obtain all the necessary information to consider product value. And we're not offering guidance on that. There is a thing called a governance source book, and I won't bore you with all the small details of this, but interestingly, it's called PROD, P-R-O-D, the Product Intervention and Product Governance Source Book. Now, that's the thing that will definitely put you to sleep later on in the evening when you've had a glass of wine. But this is where the new obligations come in, I think, and this is a number of things that are coming in to do this. So this is. Some people will say this is incredibly onerous, and others, and me included, will say this is a great step forward potentially for the industry. But it is major, and anywhere where there's a product, and this also applies to commercial, small commercial, even probably larger commercial stuff, specialist products, as well as your classic home and motor. Because one of the questions that was asked was, "Oh, well, people said, well, you've only researched home and motor. What about all these other classes?" They thought that probably would get them off the hook if the FCA, but the FCA said no. Basically, the research that we've seen, we think applies basically right across the industry. So these are principles, and we're going to set in stone. So get on with it. Yeah,
it's really interesting. And I'm going to come back to those operational challenges, but this is quite a good article that I spotted in the Insurance Business. And I think they ran a webinar navigating the future with the FCA. And so this kind of just gets to your central point that you've just outlined there about the firm's purpose. This isn't just it's not about fixing. It is about fixing prices, but actually it goes a lot deeper than that. And organizations are going to have to not just prove that they've got the systems in place and the whatever the framework is to demonstrate fair value, but they need to then back it up with maybe a cultural statement or say, how is this being driven through the organization? It isn't just a kind of a tick box exercise. And I think this next quote as well, which kind of carries on, really underlines it. It's about culture change, new blood coming into the business, and offering different thinking and different approaches to product manufacturing. So it's pretty fundamental stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we've seen it in the past when it is guidance, and then you go, okay, on the spectrum of doing nothing to doing absolutely everything, where is the balance within that? And it's only over time, as things evolve, that becomes clear. But then coming back to your operational points around collecting the data, once you've got that framework in place, how do you collect the data? How are you going to demonstrate it? How are you going to do it? As you were saying, then if you change policies and wordings and things like that. And for me, I think the fundamental thing is that insurance really needs to take a look at itself, and through trying to simplify as much as possible what the products are that they are selling, and then how they are communicating that with customers. I think that for me is really, really important.
And it's really good how what they're talking about here is saying, can you please do not talk about how you distribute products and what goes on in the background. No consumer and buyer of policies is interested in any of that anymore. They want to know, do they get a fair value product when they buy it? And I think we've talked about that a lot on our show, and we both believe in that, obviously. And I think most people in the industry do believe in that, but the fact is they don't live that every day, and that's not what happens. So when it brings it back to the purpose, that's what's really important. And it applies right through the value chain. So this is I think, the more you read it and the more you look at it, this is the regulator saying this is a fundamental change. It probably will come from, as it often does, from global regulators as well. They'll all be thinking along the same lines. They do. And I know that, and they say that there will be, this will come into the US, it will come in across the globe, because what they're saying is we're not having industries working like little, kind of ticker machines, just churning out things without any consideration. Otherwise, the market doesn't develop well, and it's not, and people will be, treated badly. And there's a lot of concern at the moment as well about post-COVID, about vulnerable customers and things like that comes into this, or is linked to this, which is, are people getting the right products, and are they able to know that? So it all comes together into something that is a fundamental shift. Now, the question partly is, how will the insurers respond to this? And I suspect a lot will simply go and get one of the big accounting firms and say, do an audit and prove that we're all right. I don't think that will wash here from what the FCA is saying. I don't think it will get anywhere near it. And I think much as they will all try and sell that service, I think this is much more about the softer stuff, the culture of organizations. I think it's about education. As you say, it's also about simplification. But it's about things that the insurance industry, I think, finds incredibly difficult to get its head around, which is, how do people and behaviors play into the purchasing of their products? They don't look at it like that. They look at themselves as institutional machines, regulated, that provide a process for people to access a product at a price, at a rate, and that's what they think about. But they do not think very much, or sometimes at all, about what the actual customer is getting. So it's a massive push on the customer centricity point.
Yeah, and I think just on that, it's not just a negative, and I see it as a positive in the sense that it's an opportunity for the industry to look at what it's been doing and fundamentally change how it positions products. So you could say, okay, this is your home insurance policy. In the event of it burning, your house burning down, this is what happens. These are the things that are covered, and these things are exceptions. I don't know, the shed. Yeah. However, if you think that is important, then here's an additional amount of money to cover your shed for this to happen.
Yeah.
And that way, and then you can almost see like a journey where you're basically filling it in, checking boxes, and the insurer can provide additional information, just saying the chances of your shed in the event of a fire, because your shed is 50 meters away from your house, the event of it catching fire is 45%.
Yeah.
Then you go, okay, now as a customer, I'm starting to understand risk. I'm starting to think things through and going, well, is that worth it? Is that fair value? And I do think it's just a massive opportunity, especially for business. I mean, I look at our business insurance and just go, I really don't know whether I'm covered for stuff or not. I don't know.
Well, there was a statistic in one of the papers I was reading recently, which said that something like 60% of people would like to have, for personal stuff, would like to have just one policy that covered all sorts of different things. So your car, your house, your home, your pets, your bikes, whatever it may be, and all in one place. Now, the industry current doesn't offer that type of policy, really, which is inexplicable, but it's probably because of legacy systems and a lack of attention to that need. I think this potentially gives that a real big push, because if you're talking about fair value, you're really talking about what matters to the customer, and those products are all interlinked. So if your house burns down, that doesn't sit as one thing, providing hopefully nobody's injured. But it links into other things and other parts of your life which also could be covered. And I think it would be much easier to prove fair value in a way in a package which looked at, say, lifestyle. Looked at Jeremy's lifestyle is this, and these are the things he's covered for, so that when me as a researcher, I come and interview, I say, Jeremy, what have you bought? What do you do? What do you need in your risk profile? And what has RSA or Allianz or Aviva provided you with? And you can say, well, look, they've covered this, and I'm really happy about that. That's a peace of mind product. This one here is a very practical thing for, my cat or my dog or whatever. So it seems to me that this opens up, as you say, opportunity for product development and really connecting with the customer. But of course, absolutely know that loads of people in the industry are going to go, oh, it's cost and it's regulation and it's gold plate and we don't need it. Well, you do need it. No, absolutely do need this kick up the backside. This is really, I think it's really good stuff. Of course, I hope that the thing doesn't get over regulated, but it's not rule bound, it's principle. Yeah. They're not setting out lots of rules. There is some administration here. And I think the contractual stuff, if any insurer goes down the contractual route on this, they're missing the point, and they'll never get there. It's about the purpose of the product. And as Warren Buffett has shown, you can do a product that just says it does three things, and there's the price. That's what we're going to have more of, I hope.
Yeah. Very good. Well, as you know, Ben, if they're looking at my lifestyle, then it would be insuring a steam cleaner, because that's all that's my weekend.
Those are quite dangerous, don't you? There's a whole section of insurance risk involved with steam cleaners, and particularly those jet wash ones as well. They're apparently dangerous.
Are they?
Inadvertently squirting people who are walking up the street and things. Massive liabilities.
I'm now going to be Googling steam cleaners and
I jet washed my dog. Can I claim?
Yeah, good stuff. Excellent. I enjoyed that. Thanks, Ben, for bringing that up. It's good stuff. Right. So, what are you doing this weekend? Any planned?
Well, I'm watching the football.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously tomorrow night, that'll be good. I think that's about it. My daughter's getting a hamster.
Oh, right. It's one of those weekends, is it?
Yeah. So I need one of these fair value packages for that.
Yeah.
I wonder if Pets at Home will sell me one.
I'm sure they'll be delighted to. Hamster insurance. All the sports on this weekend. So I'll be watching that. I'll tell you what I have found annoying is trying not to find out what the result is of the Tour de France stage.
Oh, that's impossible.
Before the highlights start at 7:00. I mean, you just can't. It was even a news item last night on BBC 4. I was like, going, what?
The trouble with it, I've realised, is it's not the biggest sporting event, so they always just throw it in as a side story, don't they? And so and they chuck it in on the front of the BBC website and into all the news items. So and so what? Whereas anything else, if it was a football, they'd say, "Oh, there's a spoiler alert if you don't want to know the result," and things like that. They give you a warning, but they don't ever give you the warning.
They don't even go. And in today's Tour de France, they just go, Mark Cavendish today.
One.
I'm just going. You've ruined it.
Ruined it. I agree, and it's really everywhere, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
just annoying.
Phil
says we're whinging.
Yeah, you wouldn't be saying that if it was a cricket, Phil. I'll tell you that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Thanks ever so much for tuning in. We shall see you next week. Have a good weekend, everybody. And thanks a lot.
Have a good weekend, all. Bye.